County. Green. Okay, sorry.
You got to start all the way over again.
Okay, thank you, Don. Sorry, I can't do that. At the end of the day, yeah, read those two memos for background from 2019 and 2020. So myself and then now Tony Diaz, he is pushing forth the urban water management plan. So this is a little bit of that kind of work. Where are the water needs that the district will supply? What kind of supply do we need to fit those needs? And so the needs we're talking here are really outside of that urban water management plan. So we're looking engage with the county. What's taking place in sort of West County that's not part of the urban plan, and we've arrived at a pretty good number that we can fall on, and we've provided that to the Bureau. Additionally, we went to the tribes, working closely with the Chicken Ranch Rancheria. They too have their own development work that they've done, and they put together a water needs assessment and have a volume of water from. So we've arrived at 2,500 acre feet per year, and they have 3,500 acre feet per year. And that then becomes the basis for a cost sharing percentage for the cost of the project. And so then finally here, that agreement came forth in about January of this year. And then now we met with the Bureau, these proposals that came from the consultants. Will this work to go forth and get the NEPA and CEQA analysis? And hopefully we go with the smaller environmental assessment, go with a FONSI, finding of no significant impacts, and CEQA, and move forward. The primary goal of all this, and sort of in short, which comes from those two staff reports from the past, is to enhance and improve water security, which is part of the strategy. Okay, so next slide. So now kind of going backwards. TUD is subject to vulnerabilities in the water supply, as we have seen in the past years. 2014, we look like we might not have enough for the year. The canal can have failures and leave short of water, where this opportunity to build a pump water from New Maloney's gives us a strategic water supply that if you remember back in 2014, those who were here, hold water up high and then serve the Columbia system, other important facilities in that area with that water. And that provides maybe some future capabilities that don't have that contract that in the future. The next slide. There's a whole lot of history, and I'm trying to boil it down into a few bullet points. There's just too much history, as Don was alluding to.
Excuse me, Glenn. Director Jacobs, did you have a question?
I did. Just a ballpark. What percentage of our total water supply is represented by this ballpark?
Very small. So this would be well, actually, let me back up. 2,500 acre feet. We draw about 16,000 acres from the main canal. So water from the river is about 16,000, fulfills all of the needs and losses and that sort of thing. 2,500 acre feet would come from New Maloney's. Right. 15%. Okay. Couldn't do that. You're better at math than I am. Now that, yeah, those are the amounts, but I think another, which I may talk about a little bit later, the hydrology of our system has 100,000 acre feet per year on average comes out the South Fork. It's a rare year, like something like 1977, maybe 1 in 41 and 50 years, where we would have a really tight need where this contract would really come into play, serve the district well. Maybe each year we have like a 1% chance of that happening, but with climate change, maybe that's going to be happen more often. So it gives a lot of flexibility. Okay, so the opportunity now, at least what I'm seeing, a lot of the regulatory world that's taking place now, especially in the state, have a placeholder now for TUD to get this contract that not other agencies. No other agencies really have this. I think we're the only one left in the state, as I understand, that the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation will even obtain this kind of contract. Getting it now would be important because the regulations are only getting worse and worse. Again, this is to enhance and improve water supply security. And this particular supply source is not subject to main canal outage, water shortage, in the small reservoirs upstream at Pinecrest and Alliance. This would be 0.4 million acre feet sitting in New Maloney's that we pull from. This contract also supports the county and the Chicken Ranch Rancheria. So it's not just the Rancheria has a very strong need for this. And hopefully the amounts that we're arriving at working with the Bureau now with our preliminary impact analysis will be show smaller impacts as we move forward. And so, yeah, with that kind of in short, you have the main contract for $165,000 with ESA. Hopefully that goes to the EA and the FONSI. $21,000 with Stantec, that's the impacts analysis that ESA will use to perform the evaluations. And then the US Bureau, we have a deposit with $46,000 them right now. Again, the cost sharing is 42% TP, percent Chicken Ranch. The next slide, I think I might have. So challenges, it's not going to be a slam dunk from what I've seen, what we've learned over the past. This contract could be protested. Anybody downstream who thinks they're maybe impacting on the environment or their other water rights. That's part of the issue here is to make sure this NEPA and CEQA are sort of bulletproof, show as little impact as possible. Water surface elevation at Maloney's, if it drops below 870 feet, which we've talked about before, right now it's going to probably fill this year, but in a dry year like we saw, I think in 14, 15, it did drop below the pump elevation. I think I have a picture of that. With that said, that's going to require a bit more engineering to provide some sort of infiltration gallery, endowment dam to actually pull water from New Maloney's reservoir. And then to pump the water from New Maloney's to the Columbia Divide, where we can get the water into the system to serve Columbia. That's not cheap. It's a 1,400 lift in elevation, and takes a lot of it. However, again, we don't know what conditions will be like 20 years from now. If we have this in place, that could be very beneficial to not just the county ranch. Something that would have been nice for our predecessors 20 years ago to have put in place some of these types of things for us to be using today. I think I have first. There we go. Okay. So it kind of caught me off guard. You probably have seen these before, maybe for Glenn or others. The New Maloney's reservoir is there on the left, and as the water level comes up above the 870 feet, it covers and submerges the pumps at New Maloney's pump station. That purple line should know the 1,000 feet. It's a long pipeline, comes from the reservoir to the Columbia Divide. So that's where the Columbia Ditch interfaces with the San Diego Ditch. And then you can go continue the Columbia to Matlow Reservoir, serving Columbia Water Treatment Plant. Or you can take San Diego Ditch and run it down to the purple pipe, which goes to the Pedro Y, which goes to Table Mountain Ditch, which goes to Montezuma, the Chicken Ranch. And so that's the route. The Right, okay, getting ahead of myself. Yep, I'm sorry, yes. These are the pumps. These are always pretty interesting. So this is the one in the top. That's a cleaned screen with the trash rack, and you can see the little buoy sitting and resting on the side. Those are two large submersible pumps that then draft through that screen when that lake is has them submerged. They pump up to a day tank. From the day tank, you go to these three, I guess two at a time, vertical turbine pumps that deliver the water up 1480 to the Columbia system. And of course, there's the intake with the lake drawing down, expose it. And that's pretty rare. So that happened. I think I have it included in on the water supply reports. I think it's been down maybe twice. Most is twice. Okay. And below the pump elevation. Again, what you learn this year is New Maloney's is very likely filled with the kind of snow that we have.
Glenn, how big are those pumps? What are their GPM, and do you run them all three at the same time, or what? How does that all operate there?
So there is a memorandum that Eric put together. Very nice. That actually describes all of those details. So I'm going to say that in-lake submersible pumps are 350 horsepower each, 3,100 GPM at 347 total head. Storage tank is 53,000 gallons. Thanks, Eric. This is great. Vertical turbine relay pumps, there's three, and it's mine, the 500 horsepower each, 1,034 GPM, and they run two at a time. And as I understand you, it's best to let PG&E know they're being turned on because it's such a heavy load. Yeah,
I bet it is.
In fact, I think the pump station going over at the Edmondson pump station on the aqueducts, the grapevine, yeah, they have that lift of about this much, some 1,400. So, yeah, this is big.
Director Balin, I think had a question, and then Director Ringen.
Yeah, this has been really great. So just for some context, our this pump station, they're down on Maloney's. This is the second point of diversion. The first point of diversion would be where the canal takes it out, up at Lions. Really, that's the canal. That would be the first point that we where our water is taken. And this would be just kind of given where we can get water. And this is one. Is the tribe working on a third diversion?
Yes.
Okay, so would all these be covered under the secret?
No, the first one at PG&E's diversion at Lions, that's entirely PG. And what we're talking about is separate. So the analysis that we're looking at now would be to take draft water from New Maloney's reservoir, or at a point of diversion that the Chicken Ranch is working on that's below the tail race below from Lake Tulloch. So that's what they're working on right now. Yeah. Now the analysis, as I understand, really looks at impacts that are taking place well below this, like at Vernalis, or temperatures and flows that would take place far below this. So, and in fact, the consultants have said the point of diversion at either Maloney's or Tulloch is almost negligible. In fact, these volumes we're talking about, 6,000 acre feet, have an evaporation hot summers in Maloney's that's 450 cubic feet per second. So if you have a little cooler summer, our 6,000 acre feet dwarfed. So the measurements, you can't measure the flow out of the reservoir at a fine enough scale to really even detect this amount of water is what it comes down to. The analysis will say we can, and then show that if you have a over 20 years, they look back at the history of the reservoir operation, and you'll have a declining balance of this much water until it fills again. And so then they look at how much impact the reservoir might undergo over like the 10-year back. And so, but the diversion points from Maloney's or from Tulloch really is immaterial in that respect. But you're right, we do get water from PG&E, but I think from a water rights standpoint, it'd be better for Jesse to answer. They have that right there. As soon as it gets into Maloney's, now it's Bureau water subject to a whole other slew.
Director Ringen?
So this is on the subject, but not, so to speak. One of the other things that is going to be a problem with I've visited this facility numerous times, and I've seen the pumps high and dry. And what I'm going to bring up right now is the other engineering situation that's going to come up. If we're going to actually start depending on this pump station, excuse me, is I also saw it after, I can't remember what year it was, whether it was 15 or 16, somewhere back around in there, but we had a huge rainfall situation, and it covered those pumps with silt totally. I mean, that whole unit was covered by silt, and I'm really concerned that this year is going to be the same thing with this high melt we've got going on. So that'll be something else that we'll have to try and figure out, is how to divert that silt during heavy rainfall years.
Right. Yeah. This project is not without its challenges. Absolutely. I think over the process, this is definitely we're not going to get this done in the next 30 days, and it's going to be multiple years, I see. And from an engineering standpoint, yeah, that's one item to work through for this pump station, and as well as the engineering aspects for the chicken ranch. They're not insurmountable, but it can work. And again, I'll go back to, I think there's sort of two concepts. Is one, the water supply is robust. We're getting lasted this long since we've been in business in '92. So the county had this like PG&E running the whole system before. 100,000 acre feet of water, normal on average, provides us plenty of water. It's those pinch point years, or if you have a main canal outage, then what we're looking at is the major reliance is probably not 2,500 acre feet of water, but something that these pumps can now. In fact, we did do that with we had a wheeling agreement, chicken ranch, and for I forget how much water we had, but we ended up pumping around 70 feet of water, and that worked till we and then the hydrology improved, and so then we didn't need that anymore. And so that's sort of one level. Two, where I view this as putting something in place because what's going to happen 30, 40, 50 years from now. And if we don't do it now, then 5 years from now, one, may not even be possible, or two, it's going to be much more expensive. And what you're talking about is a very real challenge. Yeah.
You might, not you, because you won't be here, but Tom Sasha was working on a diversion type situation, and you might have some good information, because I know he was real concerned about it too. And of course, that was back when the drought really is sinking its teeth into us. So
yeah.
Anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah. Did you have your hand up too, Director?
I'll wait until after Glenn.
Okay, well, you first. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You mentioned that the evaporation is 450 acre feet per second.
I'm sorry. That stat is more for perspective, where I've gone on, and I don't pay real close attention to Maloney's. We're I'm paying attention to what's going on up above. But the surface area is so large, it is such a large reservoir that you're in a hot summer, they've calculated the evaporation, the amount and rate of evaporation can be as high as 450 cubic feet per second. Right. And so for example, the version that we're using at South Fork Stanislaus at Lyons has a capacity of roughly 52 cubic feet per second. Normally operated no more than about 40 per second. So almost 1/10 of that flow is what we're using for beneficial uses when that reservoir can evaporate 10 times that much in a hot summer. And so that's just a perspective sort of thing. When it makes sense, like, okay, yeah, it makes sense that maybe the county and TUD, because this big reservoir sits half on Tuolumne County, that can't we get a little bit of this water for the people of this county? It would make a lot of sense, but it's going to be a big, long, expensive effort. And yeah, glad to see it.
The 6,500 cubic feet per second represents like minute evaporation.
Oh, that would be, it's a flow rate. So if you did 450 times 2, so you got 900 acres per day. And Lyons, as perspective, Lyons Reservoir is 5,500. So 5-6 days, yeah. You would deplete Lyons Reservoir in 6 days at that flow rate. So the hot summer, July, one week in July evaporates Lyons Reservoir. Yeah, in a week. So that's how big, and that's normal. That's not some crazy weird thing. That's how it. That's the sort of the reality. The numbers.
Director Boatright?
The original contract on Maloney with the Bureau of Reclamation, I think it might have actually even been the predecessor agency of TRWD. Wasn't that a lot larger as far as 50,000 acre feet?
Yeah. I think let's go to the next slide. Just as you would know. Director Boatright, I don't, that may have been the case. In fact, I remember reading like there's a 9,000 or 10,000 acre foot allocation. So one, that would be in the go to the next slide. I think I have it. In the history. And so it's, yeah, there's documents. I think Jesse had pulled together a confidential memo back in 2013. The board, that's worthy of reading. And in fact, I'll just go through this and we might be able to pick out what we have here. These are just sort of some major highlights, but if you try to follow the history, it'll take you days and days to read through the documents. So back in 1926, the old Maloney's was built by SSJID and OID. And so then they had their early on water rights. And then 1944, the Central Valley Project, the CV expansion was authorized by the feds. In the 60s, the feds started filing for water rights allocations from the state. And then that's when Tuolumne County put in their protests. And I think that may be where some of this larger amounts of water started coming. And then we'd have to go back and look at those details. And maybe there was, through the county of origin, yeah, they would throw out 100,000, whatever, some big amounts. Now, whether we were going to get that or not, that was the big thing. And the primary issue that I understand is the hydrology at the time overestimated came from the river. And so then they greatly reduced the allocation for all these water rights. But then the state came in and increased all of the environmental flows. So now by far the largest use of the water is the environment. Next is ag finally municipal. And so then from that standpoint, the 1972 agreement, that's one of the placeholders for UD now, and it was the Columbia County Water District 2 at the time, I believe. And that might have been a higher allocated water. Right. And so what we're looking at now is they agree to sell. So the district is in a position, being one of the only water agencies, even for the Bureau to entertain doing this. And so now we're looking at, well, how much, if we went with the 9,000, then when we need to prove up the water needs on it, and then we may be better off coming down lower to show less impact. It's actually. Then I'll just continue on with this. So the pump stations were built in 1980s by Sonora Mining Company to get water to the mine. And of course, they have now closed and out, and we have these pump stations in place. And then, as Don had said, between 82 and 96, the record shows that there was many attempts to get this water. Of course, cost being one of them. You can see the price tag today that we're dealing. Then the final. This one was last. So this we have on file, and I wanted to use it. And this is actually somebody we know from the water board, friend of Jennifer's, who provided these photos for us, taken from the Vista Point, looking on the Calaveras County side, looking at the Stephen O Bridge. And so, yeah, you can see how low it was in 2015, and then where it is nearly full in 2017. And yep, that should look this way again here, probably July, August. So I think that's all the slides I got. Hopefully that provided some interesting history. We've got good. Eric's done a lot of work with the contacted ESA. We've done some pretty good work now with Stantec, and we've had many meetings with the Bureau. We're in good standing there to move forward, and yeah, hopefully I have a question.
I see Jesse Barton's got his hand raised. He's got a question.
Yes, thank you, Director Kearns. Jesse Barton, TUD's General Counsel. In a direct response to Director Boatwright's question, the 1972 settlement between the Bureau of Reclamation and TUD did not quantify the amount of water that TUD or the county at that time would be eligible, TRWD would be eligible to receive from New Melones. It's an unquantified right.
And Director Boatwright, do you have another question?
Yeah, I actually have a couple more. Now with the 6,000 acre feet of water, is there an annual cost for that water to the Bureau?
Yes, and that is documented, I believe, in that first staff report in 2019, and the price of the water is determined by the in use. Currently, USBR charges $35 per acre foot for its ag rate and $60 per acre foot for its urban rate. I don't know if they've gone up, but I believe they're going to. Yeah, they have. So we're going to be in that ballpark. And then USBR also charges $10 an acre foot for environmental restoration charge.
If we do not use the water, will we still have that charge for the water? What about operational costs to bring the water out of Maloney's up into our system? How much is that worth?
Yeah, so that cost then is primarily electricity and electricity costs. So I think we're at this time we're $200 an acre foot, but I'm going to go with that's probably more. Yeah, it's going up. So your pipeline will get it to the San Diego divide. It's a short path to the Columbia water treatment plant. Now, delivering that water then all the way down the Montezuma to the Chicken Rancheria we wouldn't want to assess carefully the conveyance losses in that structure. Because now we got some pretty expensive water, pumping cost standpoint, don't really want to lose a lot of it. So there, that's something to sort of technical detail to work out at the time.
And it brings up another question. Obviously, the environmental loss from Lions or main canal diversion coming all the way down through to the Montezuma, you would incur a much greater loss of volume of water delivered, but it'd be, you know, basically under the PG&E contract at this point, as far as cost of.
Yeah, okay, if I read you right, that's very smart. Because if you hold that water up, and if we're not using it in the upper zones, or coming from to the lower zone, from Maloney's. Yeah, the loss is probably a similar kind of loss. Either get it from Lions, route it all the way down, or get routed. Probably a similar. I'd have to carefully look at that. Although the water from up above is gravity.
Is it possible, you know, can you describe how far up in our system will we be able to get Maloney's water to the future site of? Turn that on. Will we be able to get the Maloney's water to the future Sonora water treatment site?
Not now. There is a route. There's a preliminary assessment design, plot a map, draw some lines, and then the cost. I don't. But yeah, it's going to be. It's possible to build a pipeline. We don't have that now. The pump stations and piping it, you have to route it from basically the Columbia Divide. You pick it up there, and then get it to the site of the Sonora water treatment plant. Now, with that said, right now the distribution system and the intertie push water, treated water, back up to Columbia. So by taking Columbia, for example, that in using treated water, don't put any raw water down to Columbia. You feed Columbia with the New Maloney's water, and that lightens up the demand on our supply up above. I think there's a number of ways of sort of cutting that apple. Now, in a case like that I think we'd be looking at like we did in 2014, where we have very supply all off to reduce. But this does provide sort of that source in our portfolio. In fact, I remember sort of our war room of dividing up. Okay, how at this much water, and this is our demand. Let's divide everything up, and then how we're going to year, because it'll reset year. But yeah, that's one off. Yeah, piping is of course pipelines that size and going across that territory wouldn't be cheap, but
would it be possible to, or is there a clause in the contract with the Bureau that would entertain moving our point of diversion to a higher point upstream in the river at a lower, withdrawal rate, withdraw from a higher elevation at a slower rate over time to be able to utilize it higher in our system?
Yeah, the one Jesse might be able to put on that. The way that we're proceeding now with the contract is the diversion is really separate. So right now we're looking at taking 5,000 acres of water from the combined Pelican reservoirs. What are those impacts? The pump facilities are separate. That's not included in this analysis. Facilities, diversion facilities for the chicken ranch are not part of the analysis. We're purely getting this contract so that we have ability to take water from the reservoir. What we do with it from there, we could change the diversion point, yes. And then from that, then there'll be permitting involved with that. But diverting further upstream, that's going to be a different, that from a regulatory standpoint is not necessarily New Maloney's water. That's now somebody else's water that requires a different kind of water right. And Jesse could help answer that better. That's a great idea. Be nice to divert from Lyons and say this is New Maloney's water, but
Okay,
Let's see.
you want Jesse to address that, David, before you proceed, or?
Yeah, we can proceed with the other question. I'll check my notes, see if I've got anything else.
Okay.
So.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jeff. Director, President Jeff. In a direct answer to Director Boatwright, there is currently no, we have briefly discussed a couple of years ago with the Bureau about utilizing a different diversion point upstream as Glenn indicated. However, the problem with that we looked at is where would that diversion point be? It would make the most sense to reutilize the main canal's diversion point. But what we're trying to do in this situation is provide for a water supply in case the main canal goes down. And so, after discussing it and also for the reasons that Glenn outlined, we are not currently looking at diverting the water further upstream, because what we're trying to do is develop an auxiliary source as well as an auxiliary point of diversion in case of an emergency. Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Okay. You have another question, David, or?
No, I think we've kind of covered it. I've got no other questions at this time.
Okay, Director Banlon's next, and then Director Jacobs.
Yeah, Glenn, I really want to thank you for your just real common sense way you can put things in layman's terms, and we're really going to miss you as a total treasure trove of how you can just access some of these, fielding the board's questions. I'm really going to miss that to you. And one thing I just want to add is that, as you know, that evaporation thing has always interested me, because it's like a leak that just goes up into the air and nobody has to pay for it, et cetera. And I appreciate you explaining that fact that Maloney's evaporates our equivalent every year, the equivalent of water that we get, which is just really profound. And I also want to thank you for coming up with the number that how much Pinecrest evaporates. I think you had said when you calculated it that at full level is about 500 acres a year or something. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to put you on the spot, but the point is here is that evaporation takes a lot of water just out of our system, and politically nobody's really calculating for that, because it's easier to go up into the mountain counties and get the water. See, and so back to this, what I think I'm hearing you say, which is really, really important, is that we have an entitlement in the CVP water that we want to get for water security and to take the stress off of some of the upper needs, because we'll be then supplying the lower, and that it provides flexibility in our system. And that if we ask for too much water that we can't justify, that could be a red flag to people that are already using it downstream. And correct me if I'm wrong, but does this NEPA include contacting people downstream to see if we're asking for about 24 is it 1 million acre feet a year? Is that what we're requesting under this? How much are we
Six-
requesting out of our CDP?
6,000 acre feet.
6,000, thank you, I'm sorry.
That's total.
We get that, it's 6,000, okay. So that's something that we can kind of prove up with our general plan and with, I know the tribe has agricultural uses, so it doesn't make any sense to put treated water on ag. And they are already raw water customers, I believe, down there as well, the tribe. Some raw water, so system's already working and they're wanting more. And we may have other needs down in that area too, so it's maybe not so much just how much water we're getting, but the fact that we have flexibility and that the CVP plus PG&E will provide us an integrated use of manipulating this water, including environmental benefits. So I think you laid it all out. I'm just kind of summarizing it, and I really, again, I just really appreciate you putting it in layman's terms, and we're gonna really miss your common sense approach. Yeah, I don't have a question. You're a true asset.
Director Jacobs.
Yes, I've got a question about the Tulloch point of diversion. How that relates to what we're doing with the Maloney's. I don't know much about it, so maybe educate.
So the Chicken Ranch Rancheria is looking at a diversion point from Tulloch because it's making more sense from a logical or an engineering standpoint. So they have their own project under a whole separate permitting work that they're doing. That just happens to be sort of a logical spot to take it. If it was from New Maloney's reservoir, then they may be pursuing. So there's that's just how that's working. It's making more sense to take that route. Of course, that's not going to be cheap, and pump stations and the whole thing there. And I don't know much more beyond that study.
But BISA has no connection to the Maloney's project as far as TUD.
Well, it does. It's the same. It's Bureau Water. So kind of going outside my area of knowledge, but Lake Tulloch is really, it's an after bay, and so it's always full. So they're not necessarily using storage one way or another, sort of light spot in the river. So whatever you're drafting off of Tulloch is really storage from the mother storage. And it's so far up in the system that the analysis then is looking at what are the impacts to the rivers and the temperature, salinity, dissolved oxygen, flow, and that sort of thing that may impact both downstream diverters and the environment. And so whether it's coming from the after bay to Maloney's or Maloney's itself is really negligible in the analysis that they're going to run. It's like a CalSim 2. It's a major model that's looking at the flows through the delta. So the granularity of that model isn't going to understand the difference between diversion at Tulloch or diversion. It'll appear the same. It's exactly the same model.
So Chicken Ranch could get all of its needs from Tulloch.
That's correct. Yeah, the CVP contract water, you could take it from Tulloch just as easily as you could from Maloney's, and it, in all intent and purposes, is the same. It'll appear the same. It's like it doesn't matter if it comes from the other. We may find some detail, somebody that protests it and says no, it does matter, and they got quite a bit of effort to prove that it really has some impact. It's the same, and so it fits into. Does it make sense for the tribe, Chicken Ranch Rancheria, to construct a diversion out of the lake itself, out of New Maloney's reservoir, just to fulfill the idea of drafting from Maloney's versus Tulloch? It's the same. Is that answered?
Director Jacobs, if I could just elaborate real quick. Your question, I think, was related to why, what's the interaction here between their point of diversion and this overall effort? And Glenn may have said this, TUD is one of the last, if not the last agency that's really got access to getting a new CVP contract, Central Valley Project Water Supply Contract. And the tribe just doesn't have that ability to go directly to the Bureau and get a contract. So we're collaborating with them on this effort. And if we're successful, which we hope to be, they would become a subcontractor. We would be the primary contractor. Sounds like you already know that. I just wanted to get that out there. They just couldn't get access to the CVP water without going through TUD.
Those 6,000 acre feet, whether it's drafted from Tulloch Lake or New Malone, does it?
For the purposes of the environmental analysis, it really doesn't matter. But we are pretty transparent to the Bureau that our desire is our water needs assessment demonstrates that TUD needs 2,500 and the tribe's water supply, our water needs assessment demonstrates 35. So they do know what the intentions are here, but it really doesn't matter where it's drafted from.
Director Boatright.
The Chicken Ranch Rancheria's diversion point in Tulloch to the Rancheria, is that the tribe's responsibility as far as the operational costs, burdened on the water to get that water to themselves?
Yes, yeah, that's entirely their project, their facility, their cost. That he called it.
Jumping back to the middle of the presentation where we've seen the diversion in Maloney's, the pump station. Back in 2015, maybe it was earlier than that. Didn't we construct a cofferdam that actually keeps the submersible pumps in water even below 870? Or is that was not constructed?
No, we had discussed doing something if we thought we had to, whether it was a cofferdam or inflatable dam, but there have been a lot of permits involved.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Okay. Do you have any more, Glenn, or?
No, that's all I got.
Okay. Any other questions for Glenn? Well, thank you, Glenn. How about in the public comment there, Corey, anybody?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. Well, Glenn, yeah, I too am going to miss your presentations and your knowledge around here and wish you well, but boy, hey, I hate to see you go, but congratulations anyway.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah,
I'm sure we'll have something a little more formal down the road, but anyway. Okay, Director Bailey.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion if there's no other comment. Okay. I move that we authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Environmental Sciences Associates, ESA, to perform NEPA analysis and issue a task order to Stantec Inc. To perform an impact analysis in support of the NEPA review process to obtain a U.S. Bureau of Reclamation long-term water service contract for the Banks of Central Valley Project.
I'll second that.
Did you get all that, Emily? All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the aforementioned contract. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, passes 5-0. Thank you, Glenn. Took off already. No, he's still there. Yep. Okay, item number 3, Emily.
Update on district operations, April 2023.
Good morning, everyone. Eric Hall, Operations Director. Just give you a quick update on what's going on out there. Raw water, they installed all the flash boards at the lake, getting ready for summertime irrigation and the ditch outages that we just went through.
Phoenix Lake.
Phoenix Lake, yes. Sorry. So they did get the Algerine clean and up and running for all the irrigation customers out there. And then when they got that done, we still had a few repairs to make out and around some of the system from the wintertime storms that we're able to get back to. Distribution. Water treatment. Things were pretty good. Sonora Water Treatment Plant. They did the PLC controls and commissioning, so it is now modernized plant with PLCs and HM controls, which is really, really helpful to staff out there and how the plant runs and how they can control it and how it does different things there. And then we also installed a new generator at Columbia Water Treatment Plant. That was through one of the grants that we had got. It took almost 2 years for that generator to show up. It's installed and up and running. The distribution department, a CIP project was completed, the Crystal Falls Cedar Ridge intertie, the TUD part that we did up in Ridgewood. That was completed and done. It's not completely completed. They're gonna start paving on Thursday up there, and then that project will be complete. Ready to put in use when the lower section gets completed by the contractor. Construction maintenance has been pretty busy. Some main line breaks, so it's been picking up a little bit. And again, they did the Ridgewood intertie project. And then set the new power pole and meter panel for Parrots Ferry, which is another CIP project. It's a sewer lift station with a full rebuild there. And then we should get the power drop done here pretty soon, and that'll be on and running. And then we can tear down with the rest of the facilities that are there and get it cleaned up. Wastewater. Again, talking about the Parrots Ferry lift station, that got a new generator at the facility. They did the startup on it already, just in case we had any issues there with the existing power drop or power outages, to make sure that we could run the old system off the new generator. They finished installing the cellular read meters on the outfall system. They had 2 left, and they did that. That's really, really beneficial during irrigation season. It's real time. You could just pop it up on the computer and see who's pulling water, how much water they're pulling. It's been beneficial, and we're getting real reads and real data.
Nice.
Wastewater treatment, they've just been plugging away at the old plant, then helping with the new plant. Ports is at 89% capacity. It's going down now, which is nice. We're happy about that. It was pretty full. So, and everybody's down there irrigating and trying to get rid of that water. That's all I have to report, unless you guys have any questions.
I got a question, Eric. Back on your water ops, page 5. The peak raw NTUs there, I see Sonora's at 35.1, 35.7 for April, and Big Hill's 52, and all the others there. I would assume those are high numbers for an average April, correct? Or am I wrong on that?
I think it depends on the season. You know, it comes from rain, you know.
Yeah, I
when
know.
there's heavy rain, the more turbidity.
That's why I was curious. That's
So-
probably high, I would think.
35 is, I'm gonna say, for a high, that might be average over all the years, but we have a new Phoenix Lake, so it's gonna skew the numbers a little
Okay.
bit, because
Yeah.
the lake really does a good job of capturing the sediment.
Yeah, okay. Director Ringen.
So, talking about that Ridgewood intertie, how are the crews being able to take care of the traffic situation? As I understand that there's some people who are pretty upset about that, and especially with the county now coming in.
So our part of the project or the construction part?
Moyle.
We're aware that it's a tremendous inconvenience, especially because we're also going to start paving, doing that other stretch of paving. And with the counties, we did coordinate with the county. I know that's a frequent criticism, is that they see 2 projects occurring basically back to back on the same road. We met with the county. They knew about our project beforehand. It just didn't work out in their schedule. I'm not sure if it's grant funding deadlines they're working under, but we were constrained and were unable to have them move their project. As far as traffic's concerned, we did have a little bit of a rough patch at the beginning with school buses and things. So we worked out those and as far as I know, Moyle, you know, has been doing a pretty good job of, you know, holding them to the deadline and not having people stack up. Sometimes you wait in line and what seems like a 20-minute wait ends up being a 25-minute wait because you're so far back in line by the time traffic gets moving. So I think we're doing the best we possibly can, but we'll continue to be sensitive to the public and make modifications if we need to.
So is the pipeline been able to pretty much be rock free and stay out of the drainage and all that?
It has stayed out of the drainage. We have hit a little bit of rock. Jennifer may know, it's only been a couple yards, maybe 4 yards. Yeah, not a lot of rock so far.
Good.
We'll see at the end.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions for Eric or Eric?
I did have more. I skipped a page
Sure, go ahead.
on accident. So another CIP project that was completed already, majority of it, Crystal Falls Cedar Ridge intertie. So we fed water back from Cedar Ridge to Crystal Falls. It was huge and a huge help this ditch outage.
Good.
To keep water going into the Comstock and down to Crystal Falls. So that was great to have that. And that power drop, we're hoping it'll be here in the next month so we can push water the other. And then the outages can done, and we went through with no issues. And did very, very well. I was concerned with the temperatures, but we did very, very good. Crews did a good job.
Good.
And we got some projects done that we don't have to do in the fall outage.
Good. Good job. Any other questions? Okay. That's a non-action item, so thank you. Appreciate it. We'll move on to Emily, number 4.
Sonora Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant Progress Report.
All right. Well, it isn't every day, every month that you have the pleasure to interact with our associate engineer, Jennifer Batt. I know you all know Jennifer at this point, but I'll just say, you know, the project's been going on for a year and a half plus now. And the reason you don't see Jennifer at these monthly progress reports is because she's down on the job site with a weekly meeting contractor. And that's just a very small portion of the work. I really can't overstate her role in this project and the amount of responsibility she's taken on, and she's done a fantastic job. The contractor goes directly to her. She's managing, you know, our inspector, the engineer. She has got every finger involved in this project and is just doing a fantastic job. And I'm going to be able to take a vacation that Dawn approved this summer, largely because of Jennifer's role in this project. So I'm glad she's here to give us an update on the progress.
Great. Jennifer, floor is yours.
That seems kind of odd that after 19 months of putting these together, I finally get to present the first one. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. Some of the staff down there were present in our meeting, allowing me to come in. Oh boy. Eric already had the slides up. Okay, so this is the progress report for the May meeting. So on our first overview sheet, you can see a lot of green stars now, not a lot of yellow. They're moving from yellow to green. So green represents the 75% plus completion. The only areas that we really haven't started yet is our digester area. To get through a little bit more construction before we can take our digesters offline. So we're chugging along with that. So far, the only completed item is number 12, which is the emergency storage basin. Else is going pretty well. As far as our budget goes, we are at about 65% of our total budget, and that includes everything: construction, engineering services, environmental, legal, and bond counsel, things like that. So getting close. More than halfway now. Really quickly, an overview of our dashboard. The engineering item you'll see it in next month, we executed a change order for our resident project representative, which is our inspector. Just recently, we're going to also increasing the contract for pace. Our project's a little bit behind and because of that, we need more months of inspection. We've had some procurement delays in general. We've issued a change order for 113 days due to procurement issues and weather issues. It was a very wet year, so we're a little bit behind as far as that goes. So our contingency number on the next outlay report will shrink, and then carrying number will increase. So you'll notice that on this one. As far as construction progress from April into mid-May, we're doing a lot of work in building A. Building A actually looks like a building now. It's amazing going in there every time. Wow, walls are in and floors are polished and bathroom tiles going in. And it's just looking more and more like a functional office building. So in April, they polished the concrete floors in building A. They installed storefront windows also in building A. And the storefront windows, those are just when you're walking by someone's office, like Glenn's office, it's just the windows that allow you to see in. They installed those, and then also the tile in the bathroom. In building B, they installed the metal stairs that get you to the second floor where the screw press. It's set up for 2 screw presses, but currently we're only going to install one until we need to install another. So there's a big metal staircase that leads you up to the second floor, and that got installed. They began installing baffle walls in one of the chlorine contact basins. There's a slight hiccup going on with that, so we're going to postpone for temporarily installing the next basin until we figure out what we need to do with that. The chemical tanks were installed in the chemical building, and they're pretty big tanks. They're taller than I am, so they're good size. They just barely fit in there. It looks great. Q's been doing an amazing job. We got our new power pole in, so we can get a new service, which allows us to abandon a couple other services that we have, and they're getting all of that connected this month. And then they're doing a lot of work at the headworks. They grouted in a new channel for the headworks that allows the flow to go a little faster at the bottom so that sediment doesn't collect at the bottom. So they finished that, and then now they're going to be coating it, which when I did this, they hadn't coated it. And now that we're getting here today, they have. So that's how fast things move. This was created a week ago, and now it's already done. Our 3-week look ahead, we're going to continue with the baffle walls in our chlorine contact basin. There's still some underground utilities that we need to install. And then they're going to be starting very soon, double diffusers in the AAS basin. So they're dewatering those right now so that they can get in there and do the bubble. All right, now for the fun part, pictures. Everybody likes pictures. All right, so this is building A. This is their polishing operation, and then the middle photo is what the polished floors look like at the end. That is the lab, the lab room. Not all of the floors got polished. Some have a sealer and shop. We don't polish floors. So it's mechanic shop, the storage room, those rooms that don't need to look real polished. They didn't get this kind of treatment. And then the other kind of flooring that we're having in there is luxury vinyl tile. It's kind of like what we have in our kitchen here. That'll be in the offices and in the big meetings. The picture on the very right is in building B. There's a channel that's underneath. So when you're walking on it, there's going to be some grading going across this. This is where our raw sewer comes in. It goes under the slab in building B, and it ends up at the headworks on the other side of the building. So those are pipe supports for the pipes that are going to be coming in there. You can't really see it, but where that man is kneeling down there, there's actually 2 pipes. The one on the bottom is going to be used the majority of the time. And then during high flows, the larger pipe on the top will be in use as well. This is our headworks. There on the right picture and the right channel, you can kind of see a little where it kind of juts out over. Yep, right there. So you can see they built in kind of a V, like sides on the walls to narrow down the channel at the bottom there. So they completed that work, and then the picture on the left is the current state of the headworks. The picture on the left is the storefront windows in sewer maintenance room. And then the picture on the right is they're installing the roof membrane on a chemical building. So all of the roofs look like that. And they're white. You don't see the white because they put a parapet cap flashing on the edges. So anyone just walking up to the building would see a trim. Yep. So, this is one of the bathrooms, men's or women's. Tile that went in this last week or so. Turned out really nice. Did a good job with that. And they are installing some mooring posts. This is around our extended air aeration basins. Helps traffic, cars not fall in, but also it'll help bubble diffuser. And then just a drone photo of the site. It's pretty amazing how much has changed in the last year and a half. The project's been really picking up over the last, I'd say, 6 months. Like I said, every time I go out there, it's different. And dealing with things from sizing digesters to picking out which garbage disposal. I mean, it's just such this wide thing. I actually kind of glazed over our fast facts. I realized today that we've had between RFIs and submittals, we've hit the 1,000 document mark. It's a lot of paperwork. So yeah, 628 completed submittals and 438 RFIs. We are at currently 68% construction, and that number is really just based off of how much money they do it. So it's not the project overall. And this number I expect to go up. It'll go up probably pretty significantly over the next 2 periods. So in the next 2 months, I'd say it's percent. We got some big dollar value items installed now. And we're a few months behind schedule. So I mentioned that to you. They are expecting to, they're trying to December. So let's see. The original final completion was off.
Director Reagan had a question.
Yeah, I think I'd call it a question. One of the concerns I know has been once this new facility is finished, we're now doing tertiary treatment, which is a much higher level than what we were before. And I just, what I'm wondering is the interface with Jamestown Sanitary District, because I learned at the last T-Stan Irwin meeting that right now they're only 35% capable of tertiary. And so they're gonna have to upgrade, but the good part of it is that I believe they're okayed now for a large grant to try and get their equipment up to speed, but or at least part of it. But the timeline, I don't, we're talking maybe a couple of years out or something, and I just wonder what's going to happen between the time that TUD's project is finished and theirs isn't still.
Yeah, so we've been meeting with Jamestown Sanitary probably for at least the last 8 to 10 about that long, once a month, try to get them aware of when our completion date is and to figure out ways to take up to our effluent standards. So maybe Tom could a little bit more about our status on that if you want to.
Well, sounds like Director Ringer knows a little more than I do, but as a result of the last few of those meetings that we had with Jamestown, we've really got them to understand it. They're under the gun. And so that's why they went to IRWM looking for some grants to upgrade their system. So at least we got them going that far. There's no chance, I don't think, that they're going to be able to meet the tertiary treatment at the same time we're going to meet tertiary treatment. So there's going to have to be some negotiating, some sort of agreements to be made there. But yeah, we are in constant communication. I just met with Cody incidentally yesterday for a little bit, talking about some other things. But yeah, that's definitely going to be a challenge we're going to have to figure out. For the, go ahead, maybe cleared up.
Dr. Bowray?
Jennifer, on the drone shot overview of the treatment plant, to the east of the emergency storage basin and to the south of it, it appears that we've got a lake. Is that, did we create a lake with our
Mineral
stormwater?
lake. Showed out the minerals. So that is part of our drainage basin. So at the very end of the project, it won't look like that. Hewitt did that intentionally this year so that they can get through the winter and hopefully catch most of the sediment there so that all of the site sediment didn't go in Woods Creek. And so at the very end of this project, can't really see. Not really. Maybe you can go to the front side. Very first
Yeah.
one. Kind of right there where his cursor is. Go back where they built up a little dam. And at the end of this project, or hopefully by the end of this summer, they're going to knock that dam out and then it'll be actual drainage. So we protected the slopes on the sides of the drainage. So there shouldn't be much erosion there on those side banks. But yeah, that's a temporary. The color of it is very beautiful, actually. And from what I was reading on, this is from limestone and calcium carbonate. Get that really aqua blue color.
And another question, can you talk to the effect or how Forks Reservoir is going to be turned over from secondary water to tertiary water?
No,
I mean, is that presumed to be just 1 year or a dilution factor?
I actually don't answer the question.
It's a great question. We've been working with RBI consultant to help us get the permits for this, and they've only mentioned it. We haven't quite gotten to that detail yet, but they're aware that there's going to be some sampling that's going to have to occur and some time frame we're going to need to let the lake turn over. Unfortunately, as Jennifer was saying, it looks like if Kiewit is successful in completing by the end of this year, we would essentially be running our plant while we wait for the regional board to adopt the new waste discharge orders requirements for it. So there's a high likelihood there'll be some time before the permit even gets imposed on us that will be freshening up courts, so to speak, but then we still have Jamestown discharging into it. So that's the long haul sort of challenge for us is when can Jamestown come online? Because until that time, courts is still going to be technically a secondary treated impoundment.
All right, thank you.
Director Jacobs.
Just curious, the 3.5 month schedule delay, do we anticipate what the impact, if any, will be on the construction cost as a result?
So as a result of that, the change order that we did for time was due to procurement of a piece of equipment. It was at no fault to the district, fault to the contractor. the environment today, a lot of delays. So it doesn't appear, at least right now, much impact as far as construction costs go. But we did have an impact to extend out our inspection services. So there was some cost to TUD.
You don't anticipate any significant costing?
For that particular delay, I don't imagine so. There's other things. We have other change orders, but not for this time.
Director Bailey.
A good presentation, Jennifer. This is directed to President Kearns. In follow-up, even though it's not an agendized item, I'm concerned from a payer standpoint of the potential impacts from Jamestown Sanitary, potential impacts to TUD if they do not meet the deadline, and maybe have that discussion. What can we expect if they don't meet it, and how that impacts the district? I'd like that agendized so we can at least have a discussion. A little bit nervous because it's not, so
Yeah,
it's really
good point. And that's, I agree with you. I think that'd be a good idea. Director Rainey.
I think to include in on that would be also, as much as I do not like that contract with Tulalip Golf Course, how that's going to affect that, because they want our tertiary water, period. So that might be something we'd want to include in that.
Okay.
Unless there's a way to get out of that contract.
Yeah, I don't think so. All right. Any other questions for Jennifer? Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Great job. Good to see you finally on the.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, now get back to work.
Okay, staff reports.
I have nothing to report.
Anybody else? Happy. Yeah,
Morning, everyone.
morning.
Just wanted to report that Eric Hall and I will be attending the Tuolumne County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Planning Meeting that Dory over at the county has planned for this Thursday. Every 5 years, the county has their plan that needs to be updated. And it's multi-jurisdictional, meaning lots of different jurisdictions have an annex within the plan. And that also impacts our ability to obtain hazard mitigation grants through FEMA and Cal OES. So it's important for us where the current plan expires at the end of April of 2024. So it's about a year process to update the plan and get it through all of the approvals. Every jurisdiction has a resolution that is passed and then ultimately approved by FEMA. So we're starting that process on Thursday, and so we'll let you know if there's updates from there. That's the end of my report.
How about an update on the open house?
Yes, so we are conducting the open house here next Tuesday, May 30th from 5 to 7 p.m. So hopefully that's a good time for folks that are working that they can come after. You can show up anytime between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. And there'll be a whole host of staff here to answer questions. We'll have lots of information about what's going on at TUD, priority projects, recent projects that have been completed, grant projects, and grant funding that we've received, and be able to answer any other questions about the proposed rate increase as well. And you're all invited as well if you'd like to show up.
Okay, thank you, Abby.
Thanks, Jeff.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to director's communications and reports. Who'd like to start?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So
Director Bailey.
I wanted to report out on the Aqua Spring Conference, which was I felt extremely interesting. At 8 a.m. on Tuesday, there was the agricultural, and some that don't know, Aqua has certain committees that are interregional. So you have a whole lot of folks from all over the state inputting on springs. So any rate, we're getting a little more Northern California representation on some, which is really important. Okay, so that when the ad committee met on Tuesday morning, there was a presentation by David Guy of NOAA, which is Northern California Water Agency. And he talked about the fact that in the past, we've only been focusing on rivers, the riverine environments for improvement of habitat. And now they're beginning to look at the whole landscape. So what that means is looking at what they call to activate the landscape, putting water back on the landscape, because it benefits all species, not just protecting species inside the river. Okay, so so that was interesting. That was revitalizing the naturalized man-made systems in recognition that they form linkages and critical habitat, so that there's just a rethinking, for example, in how to flood the rice fields, how to allow that water to stay up, if you will, in the north, because it's performing ecological services that have value, economic, environmental, and social value. So they no longer burn their rice fields, so they're putting the water back onto it, which is kind of reminiscent of irrigation that was just flood irrigation, and that was like, no, you can't do that. You have to micro drip, and now they're really rethinking the value on the landscape for flood irrigation. So at any rate, it was interesting how we're starting to pay attention to hydrating the landscape, if you will. So next, and I thought it was interesting that the Westland's new general manager is a hydrologist. She has a hydrology background, which is I thought moving into the future a little bit. So then what I noticed during the meetings at Aqua were there was a lot of investment in the next generation, retooling next generation. The differences, if you will, over the last long time at Aqua are the changeover. There's a lot more women in water. In fact, there's a whole evening session of women in water. There's a lot of more emphasis on the environment and social equity, those kinds of costs that are factored into the harder costs. And so there was a lot of, like, the awards were given towards operational managers that were really focusing on retooling or succession planning for the next generation of water leaders. A lot of emphasis on that. And so that was really fascinating to see the emphasis. There was a fellow, an ops manager, just, because he's focused on that generation, and he won the Claire Hill Award and mentoring, and it was just really neat to see those kinds of changes over the years. So the other session that I went to was the session on the electric vehicles, called fleet electrification. And that was really eye-opening because of the expense, and everybody is up against it. But what was interesting was on the panel that there was a person from, I think it was Truckee, Donner, PUC, and his name was Brian Wright. And they were very similar to us. And they were trying to follow the CARB thing. Don't ask me what that stands for. I know you know that. And how to deal with the regulations, and how to begin to the challenges of extreme cold, the challenges they had very similar. Yeah. And their bottom line was try before you buy. That was what they recommend. So anyway, everybody, I know, Don, you're really on looking at that, and plus the infrastructure that goes along with that, but everybody was facing it. Then I just wanted to close more or less by saying that we had a Region 3 meeting. And of course, we bring up that region is our region. Okay, we have a lot of regions, but we try to put on programs that are relevant, that educate the rest of us on where their water comes from and how we're using that water. And so I brought up the fact that our county was hit with atmospheric rivers, and we need to, a lot of emphasis on fire and fuel management and vegetation, blah, blah, and hardening. And but we need to look at how to deal with atmospheric rivers also, and because there's a lot of little small purveyors that like us in the same boat, costly. So so we're gonna be putting on that kind of. And then the last thing I wanted to say is that, Aqua was just really strong. This is a call to action. I joined the coalition and contact your legislators involving opposing a series of bills that would fundamentally change the way California's water rights system is implemented and enforced. And Aqua is really strong on not changing the system, if you will. Yes, we recognize there's gaps in this system, but there's some concern about overreach from state water resources. So I don't know if we can write a letter, if we've already written a letter in to oppose these, but anyway, I'll give this to you. And I thought that was just so you guys know, there's no compromise here. At least that was what we were led to believe by David Egerton. And then the last thing I just wanted to share was the fact that Mountain Counties is having a tour, if you will, coming up June 21st, 3rd, and we're going to focus on. We have a tour on the Google campus, how they're recycling our water. And as you know, why should we care? Because they are using the water that is taken out of our environment up here and goes straight down there. So by educating north, south, east, west on where their water comes from, how's it used for the whole county, we're all in this together. These are extremely valuable. And we're also going to focus on, going to have something from Turlock Irrigation District on their covering of the canal. So they're recognizing that evaporation loss for not only energy, but water gallons just going up there, and and they're doing something. So I would recommend, I mean, these are phenomenal 1 day, 1 night, 2 night things. You get to meet a lot of people from all over the state and get to understand and appreciate their issues, and they appreciate our issues. So again, that's June 21st to 23rd. And that's a water conference, water tour. So I think that's it for me on this. And
Thank you,
that's
Barbara.
all I have to report.
Okay, who's next?
I've got no reports at this time.
Okay, then I will. May 17th, as I previously mentioned, attended and participated in the T-Stan Irwin meeting, the Water Advisory Committee meeting, and also being the chairman of the JPA board, attended and participated in that meeting also. The T-Stan Irwin, the high point, like I mentioned, was the fact that Jamestown Sanitary District is going to get this fairly sizable grant. And so once again, it goes to show that the group really works hard. We really bring home the bacon, and we've got a lot more coming too. That's in the pipeline. So that's really exciting. And talking about there's a project that's kind of gotten waylaid, so to speak. It's not working out the way I had envisioned it, and they're having a little bit of difficulty with it, but we got a grant for putting in water supply stations. And originally it was going to be focused around the homeless situation, so that they would have access to drinking water. And with the county not being able to figure out where this homeless thing is going to be. I mean, originally it was Jamestown, then they were talking Columbia, and now they've just purchased that thing up there in Soulsbyville. And that's not what this water treated water supply station is supposed to be for. And so it won't go there. Groveland Community Services got one of them. So they're busy because it's going to go into that Laverini or whatever it is, park up there. And so that that makes some sense. But the other one, they can't seem to find a taker for. We got enough money for two of them. So I don't know where that's going to go, but that brings me to something that I wanted to question. It's a good lead in. And this is questions, okay? This is our district engineer sitting at the table talking about homelessness. And I think that's, you know, that's commendable. I fully support the homeless, you know, to get them taken care of. Matter of fact, about 3-4 years ago, something like that, I gave up the better part of 2 months of my life when Resiliency Village was looking to buy 3 commercial, large commercial buildings and 2 in the properties, and then 2 adjacent residential sites. And and I did it all for free, all of my time and dime. And so I guess where I'm going with this is why was TUD involved in this? Because there's no water or sewer involved that I know of in any of the homeless situations right at the moment. And it just seems like if we're going to have TUD staff, which everybody says they're overworked, we don't have enough money and all this, well, that's really an improper use of ratepayer money, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. Real briefly, the way this came about is Don was on vacation. He asked Emily and I to attend a Tuolumne County Business Council meeting. We found out about it on a Monday. Meeting was on a Tuesday. We went and presented. I got back to the office doing my normal course of work and got a message about 5 o'clock that evening to say, hey, could you, from the organizer from the Tuolumne County Business Council, said, could you come and attend this housing collaborative? It wasn't for the homeless. It was really just for housing in general. And so I said, sure, that's really it. It wasn't something that was planned. It happened the very next day. And I happen to agree with you. We do need to kind of limit our involvement in things because we do have a pretty big workload. I probably should have ran it by Dawn. I didn't. I went out and I was not a real active participant. Mostly my involvement was listening. But I do think actually TUD does play a role in housing, whether or not it's homeless or if it's in Jamestown or if it's in Twainhart. And Tracy Riggs was there. Several board supervisors were there. There was a new housing coordinator that's been hired by the county, as well as the economic development folks at the county that we've met with quite recently. So that was my involvement.
Okay, well, I mean, it's you don't work for me, you work for that guy. And to me, I didn't understand it. And that's why I wanted to ask questions about it today. So
Yeah, and if you want to talk about it more, I'm more than
no, I'm
welcome
done.
to
I'm done.
give you. Okay. And you can call me too if you have any questions.
Okay,
That it, Ron?
that's it.
Thank you. Director Jacobs, anything to report?
I do a couple of things. First, I want to thank General Manager Perkins and staff for doing a new board member orientation last week. It was extremely informative and helpful. There's also through General Manager Perkins was able to spend some time with Glenn Nunnally, Diaz. Got brought up to speed on some things regarding water efficiency. One thing that was somewhat unexpected, but very eye-opening was the process that we go through with the FERC licensing. Particularly the Phoenix Lake FERC licensing issues. I had no idea of the degree of detail, and time and effort required to accomplish that. Right now, PG&E is responsible for that. But that responsibility should shift. The things that are going, as we all know. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenn. I have nothing to report, although I do want to comment on something that Director Balin brought up, which is the three bills that are working their way through Sacramento, the 2 assembly bills and the 1 Senate bill. And we do need to put that on the agenda at some future point. I don't know if it'd be in the form of a letter or resolution, but to discuss, I don't want to take anything for granted, but to discuss opposing those. Because in my humble opinion, there is nothing good that can become of those for us. So we'll do that in the future. That'd be great. That's all I have. We do have a closed session item. Emily, you want to read that?
Conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. Property APN 085-050-001 Al. Agency negotiators Don Perkins, Jesse Barton, and Tom Johnson. Other party to negotiations, Mike Schoner, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, under negotiation price and terms of payment.
Okay, before we jump to closed session, I just want to thank Emily for pinch hitting for Michelle or for Melissa today. Appreciate that. And we'll go ahead and, oh, excuse me, Barbara, do you have
Yes,
something?
yeah, Mr. President. Can we have a 5-minute break with through the portal?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to do that. So
Okay,
thank you.
thank
Yeah, we'll go on a 5-minute break and then we'll resume our closed session. I assume in the conference room, correct, Don? Or will we be in here or where are we going to be?
Won't we do it here and you'll just push out into a different room, or do you want us?
Session on this new system, yes, so it might be a good idea to do a conference.
Okay,
I thought
okay,
that-
that's fine. Can we bring Jesse over there into the conference room? We might need a little more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, 10 minutes. We'll go 10 minutes. All right, we'll adjourn on break and then resume in 10 minutes for closed session. Thank you.
Got three, that's a quorum. Go
I
for it.
think we can, yeah, that's right. You good with that, Don?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, are we good, Corey? I should have asked you first, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. We're back from closed session and there is no reportable action. At this point, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
There we go.